Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Please all be advised this meeting will be recorded and posted on the Council's YouTube channel. Can all those speaking ensure you switch your microphone on using the button in the middle before addressing the meeting, and remember to switch it off when you've finished speaking. First item is apologies for absence. I've had apologies from Councillor Leo Fletcher, and Councillor John Farhi is stepping in as deputy in his place. Item number 2, urgent business. I have received no urgent business. Item number 3, declarations of interest. Does any member have any personal or financial interest to declare on any item on the agenda? No. Perfect. And then moving on to the meat of the meeting, which is the call-in for asset review. So members are considering a call-in of a decision taken by Cabinet on the 26th of November 2024. We have with us the Vice Chair of Cabinet, Councillor Lecau, and the respective portfolio holder, Councillor Rahman, who is a Cabinet Member for Planning, Development and Estate Renewal. The procedure I will follow is, firstly, I'm going to ask the signatories to the call-in to address the subcommittee, and then I'll ask the Cabinet members to respond, and they may call on the assistance of officers if they wish. The signatories to the call-in may then comment on that response. We've had a number of people register to speak to the committee, and we're really looking forward to hearing from all of you. Each person who has registered will have 2 minutes to address the committee. I'm going to ask those who want to speak in relation to the Equestrian Centre to speak first, then those who are speaking in relation to both, and then those speaking in relation to Green Garth. Afterwards, I will ask the Cabinet members if they have any comments on what has been said. Members of the subcommittee can ask questions at any time. We have 3 options available to us tonight. We can accept the decision, allowing immediate implementation. We can send the decision back to Cabinet with comments for reconsideration. And the call-in subcommittee can also refer the decision to full council if it's deemed contrary to policy or budget frameworks. But our illegal officer has confirmed that this decision does not contradict the budget and policy frameworks, as explained in the report. So we have options 1 and 2 available to us this evening. Can I invite the signatories to the call-in to address the subcommittee? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We've called this decision in after being contacted separately by the Woodlands Farm Trust and the Shrewsbury House Community Association with concerns about the disposal of these 2 council-owned assets in Shooters Hill Ward, so respectively, as you've said, the Equestrian Centre and Green Garth next to Shrewsbury House. We've called the decision in part to give these community groups the opportunity to have their say and share their views on the council's plans to dispose of these 2 assets. And we're pleased that the gallery is so full and that we've got so many people wanting to exercise their right to have their say. But the reason we've had to do it in this way, through this call-in mechanism, to enable people to have a say, is because the council itself hasn't engaged the community groups in question, nor the wider public, on its plans to dispose of these 2 really important assets. And as the panel has seen in our call-in notice, it's this lack of consultation, this lack of community engagement, that is the primary concern that Councillor Tester and I have raised in the notice. So on this issue around lack of consultation, over the last 2.5 years, the Council has put a huge amount of time, a huge amount of work and a huge amount of taxpayers' money into what it calls community engagement. It's produced a very glossy document called the Our Greenwich Community Engagement Pledge, 43 pages about how the Council intends to engage with communities across the borough. There's a community engagement framework, a community engagement values, community engagement principles, community engagement behaviours, a continuous engagement cycle, whatever that is, a community engagement theory of change, a community engagement pledge handbook to help people understand what on earth is going on. To be honest, I find it all a bit impenetrable, but it is all purportedly about achieving Mission 15 in the Our Greenwich Corporate Plan. And that mission says, and I quote, the mission is to ensure that our council is better at listening to communities and communities feel they are heard. And in the case of this decision to dispose of these two assets, communities have not been listened to, and they certainly don't feel they've been heard. And the lack of any consultation in advance of these contentious asset sales, in my view, is in complete contravention of the community engagement pledge that the Council has published with great fanfare. It does actually make a mockery of the Council's warm words about engaging communities. And to me, it's a further sign that when the Council says, uses that phrase, community engagement, when it says it's committed to engaging communities, the silent part of the sentence that follows is, as long as it's on our terms, on the subjects we care about as a Council, and not on many of the subjects and decisions that local communities want to have a say in. And in this case, you know, it's clear local communities want to have a say in the future of these two sites in Shooters Hill Ward. They shouldn't be denied that opportunity. So turning to the response to the call-in, the Council's response in the paperwork for the meeting basically boils down to the central argument that the Council is making in response to our notice, which is that the Council should only do the bare minimum level of consultation that it is legally required to do, and no more than that. So in the paper at 3.17, the response says, disposal of council-owned property does not automatically require public or community engagement. What the Council is saying, in effect, is we will only consult the community on asset sales when the law gives us no other choice, that the Council is only going to do that minimum level of consultation required. In the case of the Equestrian Centre, because part of the site is metropolitan open space, that minimum level of consultation is a statutory consultation as required by section 1232A of the Local Government Act 1972. In the case of 28 Merworth Drive, there is no minimum level of consultation, and so the Council is not doing any consultation whatsoever. And I think that response to our call-in is deeply unsatisfactory. It's in contradiction to the community engagement pledge. The Council should not be looking at the bare minimum that is required. It should be properly engaging our communities. On the specific issues on each site, we're obviously going to hear from residents and the community groups involved on many of these specifics. I'm going to address the issues, some of the issues around the Equestrian Centre, and Councillor Tester, in seconding the call-in, is going to address the issues around 28 Merworth Drive. So on the Equestrian Centre, you know, this is supposed to be one of the elements of the Olympic legacy for Greenwich. And I think what we're seeing in the Council's plans for its future is a total lack of imagination and a lack of creativity, a lack of vision from the Council, and also this unwillingness to be open with the community about the various options for the site. It's been reported on Greenwich Wire that British Equestrian, which put in £250,000 of Olympic legacy funding from Sport England 12 years ago, had to involve Sport England to get the Council to even agree to meet about this, despite their stake in the site and its past uses as the Equestrian Centre and potential future uses. British Equestrian have said, we are deeply disappointed by Greenwich Council's decision to dispose of the Greenwich Equestrian Centre, especially without prior engagement with British Equestrian or Sport England. This lack of consultation undermines the value of collaborative working. So the lack of engagement extends beyond the lack of engagement with local community groups, with local residents, but also to these really important stakeholders that were crucial in establishing the Equestrian Centre in the first place. I think that's really disappointing. The panel will be aware that there is widespread public opposition to the disposal of the Equestrian Centre site. 2 petitions have been handed in to the Council with more than 1,400 signatures combined. And many of the residents signing the petition want to see a return to equestrian use to the riding centre, at least in part, as part of the future of the site. And that's, you know, one option. There are surely lots of different options that could be explored with a bit of imagination, explored together, collaborating with the community on how to utilise this asset to achieve everybody's objectives, the community group's objectives, but also the Council's own corporate objectives and political objectives, not least around health and well-being in our borough. We challenged in the call-in notice whether the full range of alternative uses within continued council ownership had been fully explored by the Council, and the response says that at 4.5 it says all council departments were given the opportunity to comment, but that no council department could identify a need for the property to facilitate the delivery of a key service. So there's been this kind of round robin. You know, the council has asked around internally whether there's any service that could be delivered from the site. Send was considered and rejected, but apart from that, that was it, you know. And I just think that is a really narrow approach to considering future uses of the site. And I think the response is really a confirmation of what we've sort of been concerned about, which is that there hasn't been this full exploration of all the potential uses beyond this very narrow business as usual sense from the council. And that includes potential community uses that could be enabled by either a community asset transfer or by an application for asset community value status. So we've argued there should be this full community consultation to the future of the site prior to the disposal decision being taken. And the response tonight, because of the presence of metropolitan open space, the response says that there will be this statutory consultation under section 1232A because of the presence of metropolitan open space. And the response says that that will be the opportunity for residents to object and suggest alternatives. But I think we can all read between the lines of the report. You know, this is the bare minimum that is legally required. It's, in my view, going to be a perfunctory consultation of the kind that we have seen in other contexts, with a notice published in a paper, with objections that are sent in read, as is legally required that they're read, and then the decision in all likelihood going ahead anyway. And at 4.3 in the report, it says there is no specific statutory process on how the responses are considered. And that statement, you know, hardly reassures us, hardly reassures residents that this consultation will be a meaningful one. You know, this is a perfunctory affair. And it would surely be better to hold a full consultation with the community up front before this decision is taken, rather than this narrow statutory perfunctory consultation later after the effect. One major benefit of holding a consultation with the community in advance is that it would give the community and community groups time to develop alternative proposals. So the report rightly says at 4.6, any proposal for a community asset transfer would need to be supported by a robust business case and clear financial modelling. And that's, of course, quite right and true. But that takes time, and I think it's really quite unreasonable of the council to expect community groups to be able to turn around that level of detail proposal, you know, really on the head of a pin as part of a perfunctory statutory consultation under section 1232A. What we need from the council is a collaborative approach. The council needs to open the doors, invite the Woodlands Farm Trust, other community groups and residents in to get their ideas, work together to support the community to develop proposals if that's what the community chooses to do. And it's particularly important, I think, that the Woodlands Farm Trust is engaged, as they haven't been so far, given their concerns over the impact of any future development on Woodlands Farm. So, you know, that's our view. The response on the equestrian centre, which I'm addressing in my remarks, you know, really does not change my view at all. It does not change our view, as the councillors have called this in, that this lack of community engagement is in complete contradiction to the community engagement pledge. It would be far better to engage up front with the community, to be collaborative, supportive of our community groups, and explore all of the potential future uses before the decision goes ahead. So just by way of a few questions, if I may, to put to kind of air with the meeting in the hope they might be answered by the Cabinet members or officers. I think it would be helpful, given the reporting around this issue, if they could clarify the position with regards Sports England, British Equestrian, how those organisations were engaged, as it sounds like they weren't engaged, and what the level of dialogue there has been with those organisations. And also specifically, you know, what's the implications of the £250,000 funding that they originally provided on the council for this sale? So that's kind of question one I had. The second question I had was, you know, can they justify why an upfront community consultation over and above the bare legal minimum has been rejected. You know, there hasn't been any rationale justification given beyond we're not required to do that as a council. I'd like to hear a justification for why that hasn't taken place. And thirdly, I'd invite them to comment directly on the contradiction between the approach that they're taking and the community engagement pledge that the council has published. Right, specifically comment on that contradiction. So those are the three questions I'd like to ask. Councillor Tester, in seconding this, will address the issues around 28 Merworth Drive, as I've said. So just before I close, I just wanted to clarify the outcome that we're seeking from the panel. The suggestion we're making to you as a panel is that because nothing in the response has changed our view, these concerns about a lack of engagement, what the outcome we're seeking is that the panel proceeds with option 2, which is to send the decision back to the decision maker with a request that no decision is made to dispose of these two really important assets in the community until a full upfront community consultation takes place in a collaborative way. So I just wanted to clarify that's the outcome we are seeking. And that's it from me, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hartley. Councillor Tester?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So my main comment regarding the 28 Merworth site is that decision made by Cabinet was made without sufficient information given for members to have made this decision fully. This is really in contrast to the response that we've received in 4.1. First line says, in making the decision, Cabinet had the relevant information before it in order to make the decision. Cabinet didn't have very much information at all. In fact, it's all contained in one document, which is just basically an A4 page, which gives a site address, some curtilage and a few figures. It doesn't address several other issues, including the Shrewsbury House Community Association have for several years requested to take over management of the Garth building and have plans for its use as part of the overall Shrewsbury House site. This is documented and also alluded to in the response that was given to us to the call-in, but no such information was presented to the Cabinet, which was being asked to make a decision on its future. There are also some other bits of information that I've been supplied with. I know members of the Shrewsbury House Community Association are due to speak and are going to cover more broadly, but there are some questions about the listed building and whether this part of the site is part of the listed building. Also, the fact that 28 Merworth is actually in a conservation area, the frontage of the building. The proposed community use from the Shrewsbury House Community Association. And there's also quite a lot of history around Garth and the previous residents of that, and questions that they've asked about the usage of the building going forward. I think this decision should be referred back to the Cabinet to consider, but this time with all the relevant information available to the Cabinet members for them to make an informed decision on the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tester. Do members have any questions? Yeah, Councillor Fahy.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you both for the presentation. I'm looking particularly at the report, particularly page 15, paragraph 3.14, which sets out a range of options that the Council in the longer term are likely to consider, including freehold sale, sale of a long leasehold interest, a commercial letting, community asset transfer, asset of community value, and a letting on concessionary terms for 7 years or more. So, do you think or accept that your call-in is somewhat premature?
Thank you. No, unsurprisingly, I don't accept that at all. The decision that we've called in is to dispose of the site, and that's the in-principle decision that the Cabinet is making. So yes, disposal means a range of things, as you said, and as the report outlines. But this decision is being taken without any of the community engagement that I certainly would expect for a contentious asset disposal that a contentious asset disposal would require. So I understand the question, and I know that, you know, as you've said, disposal means a wide range of things, but I don't accept that this is premature because, you know, as I've said, the community needs time to develop proposals if it chooses to do so. For example, community asset transfer, asset community value. You know, these things can't be turned around on the head of a pin. And I think it's only fair that the community is engaged up front before the cabinet makes a decision. You know, I don't see the rush to do that before engaging the community. You know, this is what we hear so much from the council about, engaging communities, and it never survives contact with reality, it feels to me. And I think this is a prime example of that. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Can I now ask the Cabinet members to respond to the call-in?
Thank you, Chair. We're finding ourselves in a situation where, by the last Conservative government, left a £22 billion fiscal black hole in the country's finances. And because of previous government funding for the council has actually been cut by 53% in real terms compared to 2010.
Chair, is this relevant to the call-in?
Well, it is, actually, because the reason we are doing this is because of the situation we find ourselves in. And in the same way that we've all allowed people to speak, it would be helpful if you afford me the same courtesy. We're now having to do more with less, and that means making choices to ensure frontline services are protected. This structural underfunding and spiralling costs, fast-rising demand for services from residents in need has meant that we have a strain on the borough budgets, and that strain is enormous. To balance the budget, we must make almost £34 million in savings. Councils all around London are facing a financial tsunami of slashed income, rising costs, increasing demand for adult and children's social care, and ever-growing costs for temporary housing. And that's thanks to a lot of the cuts that we've faced. Here in Greenwich, we're fixing these foundations whilst protecting residents from cuts to frontline services. Those are our values. Now, being financially responsible means making tough decisions, and we're taking those difficult decisions now and not kicking them down the line. The fiscal inheritance, Chair, from the previous government has meant that the path to recovery will take time, and this is going to take time to rebuild council funding for a while. For too long, councils have been let down by outdated, inefficient funding system, which has led to public services being underfunded, taxpayers' money being spent inefficiently, and recent local government financial settlement in itself announced is a small but welcome step forward. But we're still going to have to make very difficult decisions and financial choices to ensure that we balance the books and ensure value for money. To remain financially stable and deliver the frontline public services that our residents deserve, we have to make the best use of resources and land that we own. We're ensuring that we are instituting a programme of value for money disposals to ensure better value for money for local taxpayers. The recommended disposals mean that we can put more resources into protecting frontline council services that residents need. We're going to have to make £33.7 million in savings to balance the budget and protect these services. Next year, we're forecasting a budget gap of another £27 million. Chair, Cabinet considered the cost of running service, different services and facilities, including the business case for repurposing, and concluded that there was no reasonable prospect for these coming back into use for council priorities. And I restate council priorities. Our obligation is to achieve best consideration for each site. Furthermore, as stated by Finance, these recommendations are in line with assumptions made by the MTFS. Much has been raised about engagement. The process for disposals went to scrutiny in 2023. The custom and practice on transactional decisions has been to go to Cabinet for the decision and to dispose. In terms of the Equestrian Centre, Section 123 of the Local Government Act does provide the framework for disposal of land. This does not negate the fact that prior to any disposal of land, we are compelled to comply with Section 123, subsection 2A, with respect to advertising the intention to dispose, and neither does it preclude public or community engagement of all interested parties. Therefore, consultation will be undertaken in due course. This was the step before that could happen. I refer members also to community engagement statement by the Council's Corporate Property Officer. It clearly states that there has been some engagement with Shrewsbury House Community Association, who canvassed views of the wider community. We have a difficult choice to make. I don't think any council wants to throw out the family silver here, but we're in very, very challenging situations, Chair. I'm going to pass on to my colleague, who's going to be able to explain a little bit of the context of how these decisions came about.
Thank you, Councillor Cow. Councillor Rahman.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Cow, and thank you, panel. And I would also like to thank the for the public for being here tonight. I know how much you have to give up to be here in the evening. Having become a dad recently myself, I've learned that giving up evenings in the evenings is a huge sacrifice. So thank you for making the sacrifice to be here today. Just wanted to touch on kind of the borough and how Greenwich is a financially responsible council. We have been here for which we have been for many years. And over almost a decade and a half of austerity and government cuts, we have managed to remain financially stable, so we can continue to provide services our residents deserve. Thus, we must make the budget best use of the land and properties that we own. We have been under the same governmental budget constraints and cuts as other authorities. However, as a result of the council's responsible financial management, our residents haven't faced the extensive cuts that others have in the same time period. And as my colleague, Councillor Cow, mentioned, we are running under less than half the budget that we had in 2010. This year, further cuts are having to be made, and we must make savings to ensure core services and sites are not impacted. We have 788 sites, and although we have a high occupancy rate due to high operating and maintenance costs, we are not covering our costs at the moment. Our priority is to ensure that we get the best possible results and deliver good value for money to benefit all our residents. And as Councillor Cow mentioned, it is important to emphasise councils all over London are reckoning with reduced income and the rising costs and demand for adult and children's social care, as well as temporary accommodation. So these are really important core services that we are keeping running. This year, as we know, in order to cover our shortfall and balance our budgets for the current year, we have had to fill the bill for just under £40 million. And next year, we're forecasting the budget cap to be at least £27 million. So these are huge savings that we have to find. And looking at the assets in question, 341 Shooter's Hill, or the Question Centre, and 28 Merworth Drive, they are being considered for disposal. on the basis that they are surplus to council's requirements, to core service requirements. It is in fact government policy that local authorities and other public bodies should dispose of surplus land wherever possible. Generally, it is expected that land should be sold for the best consideration reasonably obtainable. According to Section 123 of Local Government Act 1972, this gives the Council the power to dispose of the land held in a manner it wishes, provided it achieves the best consideration that can reasonably be obtained. And it is also, as Councillor Hartley mentioned, the Council isn't automatically required to carry out public or community engagement. It doesn't mean that each asset won't be considered on its own merit. It is clear that the Council should dispose of surplus land, and they should, in first instance, seek to do so at market value. The financial position which this Council, alongside many other councils, face is well documented. It is therefore vitally important that the Council ensures that it can demonstrate value for money alongside making significant savings. The Council has a large property portfolio with significant operating and capital or condition costs. Responsibility for this portfolio sits within the Directorate of Place and Growth, and as explained in the Cabinet Report of 26 November 2024, the property functions have undertaken a review of the Council's property assets with a view to right-sizing the portfolio, thereby reducing the costs associated with poorly utilised assets and those assets that do not support the delivery of key services. Identification of surplus assets that are not required by Council services and their subsequent disposal is not only in line with existing legislation, which expects councils to dispose of surplus assets, but is also necessary to ensure that the Council's portfolio is fit for purpose. In turn, this process assists the Council in meeting the financial challenges through reducing revenue costs and generating capital receipts to support the Council's mid-term financial strategy and help protect the services from deeper cuts. Thank you.
Thank you. As just a first question from me, can you go into a little bit more to the discussions that you have had with stakeholders up to this point? There's been mentions of it in the report. There's been mentions tonight that there have been discussions with Shrewsbury House Community Association and others. So can you just go in a little bit more detail as to the discussions that have taken place?
Okay, I think with Shrewsbury House, there were discussions that took place that led to the separation of the actual house to another annex to that. And Shrewsbury House then went to a wider community at the time to reach out for things. We, at that point, decided we were going to invest in one of the, was it the outbuilding? In the main building. And so we invested a considerable amount of money to do that. However, as almost the part of these kind of quid pro quos, we now need to look at this property in separation from the activities of Shrewsbury House. We have supported them, but it was very clear at the time that this was going to be something that would be coming down further down the road. At the time, there was no consideration made, for what Shrewsbury House could offer. At the end of the day, whatever it is that the discussions made, we would have had to have a reasonable offer for the value of the property, and that did not happen. And that's why we've continued with the process. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't have too much more to add. I think in terms of engagement, there has been prior engagement. It's dating back quite a few years now. And I understand that Shrewsbury House and the Summer House, which is also kind of within the same grounds, were heavily invested in by the council to bring them up to scratch and also kind of make them kind of operational. But in terms of and in terms of the discussions around 28 Merworth Drive, I think those discussions have happened in the past, but those discussions didn't end up in a firm offer. And I think this is where we had to be, any discussions that has been made, there has to be certain level of value consideration for the property being discussed.
Thank you. Pippa, did you want to add something there?
Yeah, thank you. So when the discussions in engagement started with the Shrewsbury House Community Association, the terms were that as community centre or the association was seeking a long lease at a concessionary, and the council officers advised that that wouldn't be possible because it would be in excess of what's known as the 7-year threshold, and it would constitute a disposal, because at first they were looking for a 99-year lease, for example. So we advised them, my officers advised them, that it would have to be on best consideration terms to comply with the Section 123. And so in 4.10 of the report, it indicates that the terms put forward to the association were not accepted and this matter did not progress. And that's why it wasn't reported in the Cabinet report, because there was nothing to report, because nothing had been reached in conclusion of that discussion.
Thank you. So I suppose on that, to Councillor Hartley's point about giving time to come up to stakeholders to come up with proposals, they have had that time, they have been engaged beforehand. Is that your position?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you. Moving on to Councillor Hartley's other points, he did raise 3 questions that he put to the room, and I wondered if the Cabinet members would like to address those points. The first was on Sports England and British Equestrian and the engagement you've had with those and the implications for the £250,000. The second is why a broader consultation has not been done. I think you've touched on that, but if you wanted to add any more to that, please do so. And the third is in relation to the community engagement pledge. Is there any comments you'd like to make on those points?
Yeah. Sorry. I was just, yeah, so in terms of the engagement with kind of Sports England and Equestrian Society, I do want to pass it on to, because we have had some valid engagement, but I do want to pass it on to my colleague, Steve. Yeah.
Yes, evening. Steve Donovan, Interim Head of Property for the Borough. So in terms of engagement, we did engage with both Sport England and the British Equestrian Federation. I met with Sport England on the 16th of October. We had an hour scheduled meeting. There was no Chatham House rules or any requirement for secrecy. It was a straightforward discussion to answer any questions that they had, largely brought about by the fact that Sport England had been referenced on a number of occasions in various correspondence and in the press, but also out of a matter of courtesy regarding Sport England's original £250,000 that's already been referenced this evening, and the conditions that surround that, one of which is that if there is an intention to dispose of the site, one of the conditions is that we do have that, that the Sport England are informed of that. And we had a general discussion around that, about the direction of travel in terms of that it wouldn't be me as head of property or an officer making a decision. There will be recommendations that would go to Cabinet, and that's led to this call this evening. And I met with Jonathan Cuvée, incidentally, and Emma Marston, with another officer. And one of the requests from Sport England was that could we meet with the British Equestrian Federation, and they'd also been referenced in a lot of the correspondence and also in the press. And I agreed, and on the 31st of October, I met a number of senior individuals from the the BEF, on the 31st of October, and again, were open. There was no secrecy or without prejudice or any other expectations of the meeting. And again, we talked about the direction of travel. We talked around animal welfare, and we sought some ideas and thoughts around that. And so that, yeah, those were the two, and that was another hours meeting, whatever, on the 1st of October. So that was our engagement with those two organisations.
Thank you. And is there anything further the Cabinet members want to add on the other 2 points?
If you could just remind me of the second question again, sorry.
The second question was why a broader consultation was not done before the decision, and do correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Hartley, with my notes. And the third was if you think there's a contradiction there with the community engagement pledge.
Yeah, I'll address the second one. I'll come back to Councillor Cow for the third one, if that's okay. So in terms of why a prior consultation wasn't done, I think it's important to understand this isn't the end of the process. It is important to understand we are undergoing a huge asset review at the moment, and this falls within one of those assets. And it's important to follow the procedure for each item as we go along. So in terms of the question centre, we understand there is a public consultation that is set to happen, and the Cabinet decision is not the final decision. It will go to public consultation, so it's yet to come. So in short, the reason we haven't had one yet is because we wanted to because the particular asset was placed on asset review as a wider program rather than an individual asset review. So the public consultation is yet to come.
Thank you. Councillor Cow, anything to add?
In terms of the contradiction, I would say there is none, because this is a matter of interpretation, and it also depends on various levels. Yeah, you can laugh, it's fine.
Can we be quiet in the public gallery, please?
Yeah, one has to determine the level of public consultation. It does go with cost, and so in these situations we looked at what was the best possible route forward in all of our disposals. And in this situation, we knew that there will be a consultation, and a full consultation, a public consultation, as well as stakeholder consultation for the equestrian centre. This other site, we've had the discussions around that, and we felt that we are in a position to move forward with it. We still have a gap to fill, Chair. And the reality is, in all of our assets, in terms of the council, we have thousands of community groups asking us to be able to use these assets, but we've got to actually see and look at how we can fill these gaps. They just don't fill themselves. And, in an ideal world, if we didn't have those issues, then we could have different considerations. We're not in that luxurious position.
Thank you, Councillor Cow. One follow-up from me, and then I'm going to hand to my panel members. You mentioned there that there will be full and stakeholder consultation in due course. Can you give us a little bit more colour as to what that will look like and how you will take into account responses to the consultation, please?
Chair, I can't give you that now because I don't have that. No. I'm not sure if the officers will, but I'm not going to sit here and say something I'm not sure of. But all I do know, and what the Cabinet was satisfied with, was the fact that that has to go out for consultation.
Thank you. Councillor Fahy?
Sorry. So in relation to the equestrian centre, because it's open space, so it's not related to the Metropolitan, it's the fact that it's open space, then that's what requires the notice of to be put in the press, and for a minimum of 2 weeks consultation in order to receive responses. And there's no prescribed process for how we do with this, but we must make sure that the results of the consultation must be conscientiously taken into account. And so we don't typically do that before we get a Cabinet decision, because that's not what we do in practice. We do it once we've got the principle from Cabinet, and then we follow that with the process, which is the statutory process, as you refer to. So it will be in the press, and then all responses will be considered, and then obviously that gets considered internally, and then in consultation with legal services, and then the outcome of that becomes part of the forward process in terms of consideration on the disposal.
Thank you. So just to be absolutely clear, the Section 123 process, you advertise it in the press, and public can then make their contributions in response to that notice.
And that's in respect of the equestrian site because it's open space. Thank
you. Councillor Fahy.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify 3 points, if I might. Appreciation to Cabinet members for their comments. Just to clarify, really, can you confirm the position with regard to paragraph 3.14, whereby a number of options have been highlighted? And secondly, with regard to paragraph 3.15 and 3.16, where it talks about community asset transfer and assets of community value, and looking at 3.16, it talks about the asset use has furthered the social well-being or social interest of the community in the recent past. Are all of these options on the table to be considered in due course following and during the consultation? And my final point to officers, can you confirm the value as to the two properties we're talking about this evening?
I'll start with, as part of being open about the various processes, we have laid out all the possible potentials for transfer. But whichever way we looked at it, it would still need best value, regardless of which way we went. Now, in terms of criteria, if a building has not been in use for a while, and again, we can sit down and discuss the detail of what that a while means, then some of these options would not apply. And I'll pass it on to Pippa.
Yeah. So,
with due respect, in terms of the assets of community value, those are governed by the Localism Act and therefore set in legislation. So therefore, presumably, Cabinet would have to work within that framework. Would you accept that?
Yes. So just to clarify, if something is going to be nominated as an asset of community value, it's on our website, and any individual can nominate it through that process, and then the council has to consider it within the framework and the criteria that have been set out in the report. And so that does remain one of the options, but the asset of community value is not a disposal in itself. It just enables there to be a period of time that facilitates the individuals or group of individuals that have bid to have the ability to bid if they can fundraise or identify the funding for, to put forward. In relation to your second point, Councillor Fahy, I'm afraid I can't confirm what the value is because that would be commercially sensitive. And when you take a site, any site to the market, we don't disclose what we think the indicative value might be because we're trying to test what the market will provide. And so that's how you secure your best consideration is what will the market pay for a site. And so that's why I'm not able to disclose those indicative values at the moment.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. It's great to see so many members of the public here this evening, and I think we can see how serious this is to the community. And therefore, I will get to my questions, but it was deeply disappointing to hear Councillor Lacau use her answer to make completely irrelevant political points. She mentioned that the Labour Party are taking tough decisions now and not kicking them down the line. I can see Councillor Lacau here, Councillor Smith, Councillor Hyland. They've had 14 years to sort this council's finances out, and they haven't taken it properly.
Let's avoid those comments,
and so
please.
I think that is a very important point to make, that we've got a lot of people here who have not done that. But Councillor Lacau are making political points, Councillor Smith.
Can we move on to the questions, please, Councillor Davis?
So my first question is, you know, we've heard the response from the Cabinet member, and we've heard the bleak picture painted of the Council's finances, and we heard a very much non-answer of Councillor Fahy's question around whether all options were open for disposal. How can the community engage with the Council in good faith when it very much sounds like a decision has already been made that a freehold sale will be done of this site?
So the reason in point 3.14 of the report that it lists the options for disposal is because that exactly is the list, and so we're being very open and transparent about the routes to which a disposal could be made. And it's open to anybody in the room or outside of the room to submit an offer as and when the process were to start, if it were to start. So any option is on the table because you don't know what the market will bring forward until you actually notify and advertise that the property is listed for disposal.
And so, Pippa, given that the discussion we've had this evening is around that this is pressing due to the concerns of the Council's finances, what is the timeline you expect on the sale of both assets?
So in the original Cabinet report, so the timeline isn't within the scope of the call-in, but I will refer back to the original Cabinet decision. It said that any disposal would be taken forward in consultation with Councillor Rahman as the Cabinet member and the leader, and I haven't yet had that discussion given the call-in, so it's not a prejudged outcome in terms of what next, and so I will do that as and when the decision is taken.
And then we've heard that there's obviously the statutory consultation that has to take place on the Equestrian Centre. Will the Council commit to carrying out a consultation on Green Garth as well?
No.
And then my final question, Chair, is that I think this entire situation and could have been avoided by the Cabinet engaging with the community early on. You know, there are so many people here this evening who want to work with the Council to find a use for these buildings, and instead we've got an event that has created bad feeling between the Council and the community, two different sections of the community, about sites that the community care deeply about. And so if the Council will not consider this with this, will the Council go away and with future asset sales take into consideration the mess that has been made with these asset sales and the ill feeling that has been created within the community? And will the Council change their approach moving forward?
Yeah, no,
That question is outside the scope of the call-in, I'm afraid, Councillor Davis. Do the signatories to the call-in have any comments they would like to make on the responses that they have heard?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, look, everybody's come here tonight with the best of intentions. I'm going to choose my words carefully. I'm really disappointed by what we've heard, you know, particularly, you know, from Cabinet members opening, as Councillor Davis said, with that party political response. I don't think that's why residents packed out the gallery tonight, why they made up time in their evening, as you said, to come in here. They didn't come here to talk for a party political debate about local government finance. They came here to talk about and listen to comments and views on the Equestrian Centre and 28 Merworth Drive. And I think from the Cabinet members that was particularly misjudged. So I'm very disappointed about that. Nobody doubts that RBG's finances are under pressure, but that was an attempt to distract from the specific issues that we've raised in this call-in, the specific issues that the community has raised about these two specific disposals. It's a way, frankly, of trying to dodge the issue, and I think it's really unacceptable. You know, until the Cabinet members were prompted by the panel, for which I'm grateful, we heard no justification of why the community wasn't engaged over and above that bare minimum legal requirement. We heard no defence initially of the contradiction with the community engagement plan. When prompted to get to that point, you know, in and amongst everything we heard, all the sort of, you know, all the responses we heard, I detected a nugget of an argument about cost, that it would have been too costly to run a community consultation. And I think if that's really the argument the Council has, the only argument the Council has for not going beyond the bare minimum, I think that's a real false economy, because we're talking about the futures of sites that could be of immense value to the Council in achieving the Council's objectives and also the wider community. So if that's really the argument, that's a really disappointing one. I was a bit astonished to hear the Cabinet member eventually address the claim I've made, which is that this contradicts the community engagement pledge. The Cabinet member, Councillor Lacow, said the community engagement pledge was a matter of interpretation. And it seems that she may be right. Residents interpreted the community engagement pledge to mean that they'll be engaged, and the Council's interpretation appears to be that they won't.
Councillor Hartley, do you have a question for the Cabinet member here?
I think that's really, really disappointing. And my question would be, Chair, you know, given everything we've heard tonight, the most revealing thing we've heard tonight is that 2-week consultation, that statutory consultation on the Equestrian Centre, is going to be what I feared, a perfunctory 2-week turnaround consultation that doesn't give the community enough time to come up with the proposals that they may wish to come up with, which they do wish to come up with, about the future of these sites. So, you know, my question would be, really, would the Cabinet just think again, after listening to what we're about to hear from the community tonight, to accept the fact that the Council has just got this one wrong? And secondly, there is a broader implication here for the asset review programme. The communications approach to these 2 asset sales hasn't worked. There is going to be future asset sales that are going to be contentious as well, I'm sure. And could I invite the Cabinet to really rethink the whole approach to the way that this is being communicated or not? Because, you know, we can't do this every time. The Council is going to have to live by the community engagement pledge that it has published to such great fanfare, and actually engage the community when these decisions are made, before they're made, not in this perfunctory manner. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lacow?
I find it really interesting that Councillor Hartley is talking about community engagement when he's been so critical in full council of any, you know, investments or any attempt to put anything in community engagement. Anyway, when I said it's a matter of interpretation, what I was saying is that, you know, we feel that we have had some discussions with the relevant groups. We have had discussions, and they've also gone out and to reach out to a wider group. So in terms of this property, we need to make a fiscal decision for the benefit of the wider good, if you like. And this is going to come up because we have many assets that are actually costing us just to maintain, because there's no one, they're not in use, and so on and so forth. And so I think the Equestrian Centre has been shut for how long?
So it shut last year.
Yeah. So we need to make decisions, because all of this, every time there's a delay, it's costing the council. But what happens after that consultation is going to be a matter for the director in consultation with her cabinet lead. But I do expect that it's going to be a fair consultation.
Thank you. I'm now going to move to members, to the members of the public who have registered to speak. A reminder that that everyone who has registered has the opportunity to address the subcommittee for 2 minutes. Can I emphasise that you must address the subcommittee, not the cabinet members? And given the volumes of speakers, I am going to be strict on time, and please limit your comments to the grounds of the call-in. We can only make our decision based on the grounds of the call-in, so please use your 2 minutes to address those. So I'm moving to my speakers list. Can I start with Dr. Barry Gray, please?
Sorry, Chair, Councillor Rahman's had his hand up.
I'm so sorry, I didn't see you, Councillor Rahman. Just, sorry, one second, sir. There's a further comment from the Cabinet member. 1 second, thank you.
I won't be very long, and I do politely wait my turn. But yes, I just want to say, in terms of like what Councillor Hartley had to say, I know that it took a while to get to the question, and I appreciate the question. But I think what was not kind of appreciated is actually, it's not just that the council is in a tight situation with the budgets. It's about how responsible the council has been and how responsible it needs to be going forward for our residents. That was the point of my statement, is to try to set the scene of what we are dealing with here, and not necessarily simply looking at individual pictures. We need to look at the broader picture as well, how we serve our residents and how we use the assets in a responsible manner to make sure that we serve our residents and use the assets in the right way. And what we did at the beginning, even Councillor Kay, it's not, I think it can easily be made into a political statement, but I think it's about setting the scene of what we're dealing with. It's been, the council has dealt with financial crisis after crisis and budgetary cuts over 14, 15 years. And it's done it well. I can tell you that it's done it well compared to other councils because of the way it's been managed. And I know my colleagues will kind of mention, and they can't defend themselves, but what I will say is, because of the work that they did, our predecessors, we are here in a better position. We don't have a financial black hole in the same way other councils, but we are in a very good position to make these decisions and make these savings still, and we're in control still, and I think that's important.
Thank you. Dr. Gray, thank you.
Many of the points I was going to raise have been raised already, so I'd just like to make a couple of corrections. The Equestrian Centre was open to July of last year. It was run by North Kent College, so it's not actually true to say it's been closed for 4 years. And it's just one of a number of mistakes that have occurred this evening. Secondly, a final decision has been made. It says so on the face of the agenda of the Cabinet meeting in November of last year. It clearly said, decision final. This is the final decision. Any statutory consultation that takes place on metropolitan open land at the Equestrian Centre will be a consultation on a decision that has already been made. And I ask you, what is the purpose of that? Right, just going on, what we want to happen at the Equestrian Centre site is develop a community hub with full community engagement, as the Community Engagement Pledge promises us, following the policy framework of the Localism Act and the Community Engagement Pledge. And the core strategy, based on a reinvigorated Equestrian Centre, we would seek to expand the education activities at Woodlands Farm, set up craft centres, farmers markets, and would explore with other charities the possibility of using the Edwardian farmhouse as a residential centre for providing farm experience for inner city children from all over the country. It's already been done, and we're speaking to the charity who is doing that. What we want you to do is to help bring this about by recommending to the Cabinet that they reconsider, well, preferably to have a whole full council meeting. I don't really understand the reasons why you can't do that, but I mean, no doubt. I have read Section 4E of the Council Constitution several times. I still don't understand it.
Thank you. Dr. Gray, we are at time, but I do have your written submissions as well, and the panel have taken those into account.
What we want you to do is to recommend to the Cabinet that they relook at the decision, that they have a proper public engagement and consultation, and they have a pause to enable Woodlands Farm Trust and others to formulate a plan and an asset of community value.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. My next speaker is Ian Blight. As he makes his way to the microphone, I would just like to correct the record that Pippa did say that the farm was closed last year. I think you might have just misheard, but it was clear that it was last year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you hear? With respect to the original paper, the sporting agreement with Greenwich indicates that they will be due a percentage share of the final disposal receipt in proportion to their 250k contribution as compared with the original cost of the project. This sum is significant and not highlighted. The options do not consider the continued renting of the 2 flats in the centre and possibly other rooms that would provide an income of at least 38k per year and negate the cost of holding the property vacant and allow time for engagement and consultation. The whole of the equestrian centre is on land designated as Metropolitan Open Land. Complying with the 2001 London Plan Policy G3 will remain a condition of any proposed change of use on any part of the land forming the centre. This constraint is understated. With respect to the Greenwich Annual Plan, the long-term closure of the equestrian centre is not consistent with Mission 4, that the children and young people can reach their full potential. With reference to Mission 8 and the London Plan, any revised use is highly unlikely to deliver improved public services for new and existing communities. We are potentially throwing away a unique opportunity. The disposal contradicts Mission 4, that voluntary, community and socially motivated sectors in Greenwich will be strengthened. The disposal contradicts the outcome of Mission 15, that states we will communicate and engage in ways that give all residents a voice. Finally, and with reference to the policy framework and the Greenwich Community Engagement Pledge we've heard so much about tonight, the criteria for the disposal do not include the option to maintain the equestrian centre's services. There is therefore a presumption that the disposal of the equestrian centre will affect the council's service delivery, and hence community consultation needs to be carried out before any decision to dispose of the centre. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Paul Howick. And can I remind the speakers to stick to the ground of the call-in, because those are the only things we are able to take into account in our decision.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Paul Howick. I'm a trustee of the Woodlands Farms Trust, who are the immediate neighbours to the Equestrian Centre. I want to start with a few words. The Equestrian Centre is part of the London 212 Olympic legacy. These bespoke facilities take full advantage of its unique heritage, with on-site hydrotherapy pools, a show jumping paddock, outdoor menage and stabling for 20 horses. This is one of the few places in London where you can study an equine-related subject. Now, those aren't my words, they're words of the Royal Borough of Greenwich, which can be found still on your website. Now, not all of that is relevant, but much of it still is. Now, I ride horses, and I'm privileged to volunteer at the Docklands Equestrian Centre, which is based in the London Borough of Newham. The London Borough of Newham is one of the poorest and most diverse boroughs in London. It has the highest percentage of people in low-paid employment, 36%. So it's not the obvious place for a riding school, you might think, and yet its success speaks for itself. We have queues round the block for our rider pony days. We teach children aged 6 and grannies aged 66 who've never touched, let alone sat on a horse before. And we have full engagement with the Riding for the Disabled Association. Working with horses, associating with horses, teaches self-discipline, empathy, teamwork. It's an asset to the community and to people in general. Now, Newham is not a royal borough, but we've been visited by members of the royal family, late Duke of Edinburgh, Princess Anne, in recognition of the service it provides to the community. There's absolutely no reason why the Equestrian Centre shouldn't offer the same benefits to the wider community here if it's properly managed, and that's going to be crucial. But it could be an asset to Greenwich, to the people of Greenwich, and to the wider London if all those things are put in place.
Thank you very much, sir. Can I have Margaret Jones next, please?
Thank you. I'd like to say that I've been a long-term member of the Borough. I was born in the Borough of Greenwich. I've had the Borough of Greenwich close to my heart, although I have moved away and come back again. I was unhappy at the sale of the equestrian centre, of this site, the equestrian centre site, at the beginning, and losing that section of metropolitan land. But I became reconciled to that when I saw the good that came from using it as the equestrian centre with vocational skills training. It created a legacy for the 2012 Olympics as well. It was a success. It should have been a success. Hadlow College failed, not because of the equestrian centre, but because of their own mismanagement. I go no further in saying that. Those in Greenwich interested in learning to ride or have any equine training have to go out of the borough. It's a fact that the majority of young people wanting to ride are female, and there are fewer outdoor activities for girls. The Mottingham Riding Centre is in the borough of Bromley. It offers rides and riding lessons to school groups, including children with special needs, in both Bromley and Lewisham, not Greenwich. In Greenwich, we've lost that opportunity for girls and boys to take part in excellent exercise and learn equine management. How much better to revive it than sell it off? Selling off an Olympic legacy site with stables and facilities built hardly 10 years ago, as if it's a surplus land, totally misses the opportunity. We're losing a valuable asset. I was until recently a trustee of the Woodlands Farm, and I know that small local volunteer bodies like the farm can work, can give opportunities, can provide services such as school activities for many thousands of children, as we do, properly managed and linked to the national curriculum and jumping through all those correct hoops. They do not necessarily have to be provided by local government. Woodlands Farms flourished in Greenwich for nearly 30 years, community run, and there's also Sevendrew Castle, a valuable local asset, which wasn't managed to be sold off, but managed for the community, saved from going out of local control. Current Greenwich, this is another asset of great value to the community. Support your own policy on community engagement. Don't let it disappear into the pocket of a developer.
Thank you very much. Can I have Nadine Towle-Baker now, please?
Good evening, Chair and committee members. I represent Save Greenwich Equestrian, a community group supported by 1,817 individuals from Greenwich and surrounding boroughs who have signed our petition to save the equestrian centre. The Council's decision to sell the site, made without notifying the community or seeking input, fails to follow proper process. Public open space must be protected by transparency and consultation, neither of which has occurred here. This undermines trust and contradicts the Council's own commitments to fairness and inclusion. We have received legal counsel regarding this, and we can conclude that the Council are in breach of quite a few of its own policies. As London pursues a 2040 Olympic bid, how will Greenwich Borough be remembered? As the borough that upheld its Olympic legacy, or as the only borough to abandon it? This site holds the potential to inspire future generations while serving as a hub for inclusion and recreation. The Equestrian Centre has served the community as open space for recreation and education. If sold, protections for public spaces and metropolitan land must be upheld. And I know a few speakers have spoken about metropolitan land, but let me just inform this committee. It's protected under the London Plan, and it explicitly states that it can only be released under exceptional circumstances. Financial difficulty does not constitute exceptional circumstances, and this has been legal counsel advice. I'd also like to remind this council that Stratford Borough has Olympic legacy sites, and they haven't sold them. They've actually turned it into a community. So I'd like to say, please pause this decision, review the process, and engage meaningfully with the community. Once again, I have 1,817 individuals from this borough who have signed the petition.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I have Jim Eyre now, please, from the British Equestrian Federation? Thank you.
Chair, members, my name is Jim Eyre, CEO of the British Equestrian Federation. Thank you, and I'll try and avoid repetition, but thank you for the comments so far. I'm here in my capacity not only as sort of stewardship of the Olympic teams, but also encouraging grassroots sports. We've heard the centre stands as part of the Olympic legacy with 250k investment of public money to be a local equine hub and an educational facility to grow horsemanship excellence, which unfortunately through mismanagement has fallen into abeyance. But we've seen in other boroughs such as Stratford who've embraced the vision to revitalise the Olympic facilities, turning them into thriving hubs for sport, education and health. And actually, locally or relatively locally, Ebony Horse Club in Lambeth thrives by providing a crucial hub between the community, the council, schools and other youth-related agencies and charities. We know these are challenging times, and riding establishments like sports clubs do require energy, imagination and emotional investment, but led right and led well, they can be a beacon of positive engagement critical, particularly in urban environments. The centre is not just about horses, it's about people. It provides vital access to allow children from all backgrounds to have the opportunity to experience a unique relationship with the horse and to have the opportunity to broaden their horizons. It can be transformative and aspirational. These are not just local benefits, they're regional opportunities for inclusion, recreation, employment, and even environmental stewardship. Like pitches and pools, it should be part of the Council's strategy for sports facilities, focusing on the need for health and well-being, not marginalised because it doesn't fit the norm. Once this land is lost, it's lost for good. I would also like to add that the briefing document inferred long consultation with us. I think that's slightly disingenuous. We did have a meeting. We had sought a meeting for quite some time. And actually, although it was an open meeting, the decision was a fait accompli, and there wasn't much room for negotiation. The decision has clearly been made through an optic of finances, without consideration of the social and community value these centres create. And it's at direct odds with the success of other boroughs and the tenets of the 2012 Olympic legacy. You may have heard the disbelief and disappointment of this decision from the equestrian community throughout the country. I would strongly recommend that this decision is considered carefully and reversed, and that any future consultation is consultation, and there is sufficient opportunity to make the equestrian centre return to the valued community asset it can be.
Thank you, sir. Paris Buttery, please. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair, committee members. My name is Paris. I'm here not just as a community supporter and not just as a signatory. My whole life has been profoundly impacted by opportunities like this that could be offered at the Greenwich Equestrian Centre. For many individuals in our community, especially of those of us from minority and disadvantaged backgrounds, and I speak from experience, places like this are not just a facility, they are a lifeline. A place like the Greenwich Equestrian Centre could and should be used as an access of opportunity to those who we can help transform lives, unlock potential and inspire hope. It's not all just about horses, it's about people. It's about our people, our community, opportunities and possibilities that people in our community are not even aware about. Facilities like this provide a safe and supportive environment. Not everyone wants to go to university. I never did. I'm dyslexic and I'm a visual learner and I'm more hands-on. I've ridden my whole life since I was about 12 by given a rare opportunity. The Greenwich Equestrian Centre offers alternative chances to develop skills for young people of a wide variety of backgrounds, exploring career opportunities in the equestrian industry. Without this facility, people might not even know opportunities even exist. I believe this opportunity is not to be missed, and it is even a possible springboard for opportunities for individuals in our community that should be exposed to opportunities within the industry. Disposing of a centre like this really doesn't just mean losing a building. It means closing the door on future opportunities and possibilities, on untapped talent that we don't even know is out there. We're constantly telling young people to dream big. How can we do that if we're not giving people opportunities, you know? This, I asked to see the centre as an opportunity. I see it as an opportunity to invest in young people. We've already done that. We've invested money. Let's continue that.
Thank you, sir. Your time is up, but thank you so much. Now can we hear from Andy Stanley, please?
Lady Chair, gentlemen, thank you for this opportunity to speak this evening. I'm a contract manager with a long history in building infrastructure projects in government and capital sector, including London 2012 Games. But I'm also a governor at Shooters Hill College, a leader in scouting and an environmentalist. I can consider many perspectives on this decision. Today I'm here, though, specifically to talk to you on behalf of 10th Royal Elton Scouts, who are the scout group for Shooters Hill. Over 34 years, I have called Shooters Hill Ward my home, and I've witnessed firsthand the importance of volunteer-led community services that bring people together. Our group has been serving the community for 86 years, providing life skills, training, and a safe place for thousands of young people to grow, develop, and thrive. We are the largest community group in the ward, yet we currently have 150 active young members and an equal number on waiting lists due to severe lack of space. The facilities available to us, including our regular use of Shrewsbury House, can only accommodate around 30 young people at a time, which simply limits the benefits that we can offer the community. Scouting is a programme that offers inclusivity with no gender, race or religious restrictions. It is a vital part of community life, providing regular, structured place for young people to belong, learn and grow. Our needs are urgent, and without a suitable hall, we are unable to serve the community to the extent we should. When decisions are made without consultation and without consulting the communities directly affected, we risk neglecting the very services that make our neighbourhoods vibrant and safe. This is especially pertinent in the wake of recent tragic events in our area, which remind us of the risks that we face if we don't provide enough positive outlets for our young people. The Council's missions include commitments to social housing, strengthening voluntary and community sectors, creating safe, attractive neighbourhoods and reducing knife crime. Yet decisions like the current one risk undermining these, disposing of assets that could help deliver these outputs.
Thank you, sir. You're now out of time, but thank you for your contribution.
Okay, I have actually forwarded a written submission to you as well, which goes on further.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I have Tim Rose, please?
Hi there, I'll try and keep it very quick. I'm Tim Rose, long-term resident on Shooters Hill, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I understand the temptations of raising cash for the council's day-to-day needs by selling surplus assets. But in my view, the buyers of Green Garth and the Equestrian Centre are unlikely to want to live in an old house or basically manage horses. They're much more likely to want to profit from property development. Considering that land is about 1/3 of the cost of any property development, then obviously there's significant savings for a developer to make there. Not all would agree, but if these sites are valuable for housing, and I suspect that's what's going to happen in the long run, why aren't Greenwich looking at using some of this land for their own Greenwich Build projects? The approach would save the expense of looking for land. We already own it. Not everybody will agree with what I'm saying here, but that is a potential future use. Okay? Selling assets now is a one-time win. That's it. It's gone. Yeah? If we have the land, we can repurpose it. When buildings fall out of use, we can rebuild. If we don't have the land, we don't have that as an opportunity. So I'm going to cut this really, really finely. Basically, my proposals there are probably the thin end of the wedge for many people. Okay? People won't want to see property development. But if we were to see property development, it'd be better in the hands of the council, not a private developer that won't meet any social needs. And if we were to do our own property development, we could potentially reserve some land for woodlands. We could potentially keep some equestrian facilities, or we could even build a hut for the scouts. So there's lots of options we could have if only we'd consult properly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Tom Bell, please. Tom Bell. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to say I support all of the arguments against these proposals that have been heard tonight, against the giving off, basically, getting rid of this land, disposing of this land. And I say that as I'm the chair of the Shooters Hill branch of the Labour Party, in which these two centres exist. And I can assure you, and I can assure the council, that we are utterly, totally opposed to what they are proposing. And if the council insists, despite all what you've heard tonight, to continue with your proposals, we will continue to oppose you then as well. We don't want this. We want to work with everybody for the benefit of the people of this borough. But the way that this has been done has been ill thought out and not taking into considerations the feelings of the people who are being trampled on right now. And so I want to urge the council to reconsider this. There are far better proposals on the table around. There are other ways to deal with the financial issues without selling off these prime jewels in our crown that we have as a council. And so I've listened tonight at the arguments to justify what's being done at the moment from the councillors. I was bitterly disappointed because I didn't hear a single argument that carried any real weight. In fact, I felt more like there was a kind of smoke screen being pulled down over my eyes. And I don't want to feel that from my council, a council that I fully support, utterly. And so I would support those who are calling for the prevention of the offloading of these assets, and that we should go back and try and work together, all of us together, to work out a better way of dealing with this problem than just by a lot of smokescreen, and I have to say a certain amount of sophistry.
Thank you. The next set of speakers are focusing primarily on Green Garth. I've got Rob Million, who is the chair of the Shrewsbury Park Residents Association.
Good evening, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Rob Million and I speak as the chair of the Shrewsbury Park Residents Association, covering the Shrewsbury Park estate with Green Garth and Shrewsbury House at its heart. The association has existed since 1935 and represents around 300 houses. The association contends that Cabinet made a decision based on incomplete information presented to it. We request the decision now be reversed and consultation undertaken. We also request for our written submission email to this committee of 18th December be added to the committee papers. I can advise that the association wasn't consulted on the proposal, even though we are a council-registered consultee organisation and are routinely consulted by the council. The association was also in active correspondence with the council in relation to Green Garth. Despite this and the council's community engagement pledge, we were not consulted. The association would like to make the following points not included in the Cabinet report. Shrewsbury House and its grounds were gifted to the Metropolitan Borough of Woolwich for a token £9,000 for community use. This community use was continued when Green Garth was built in the 1940s as an air raid precautions bungalow, clearly also a community use. Green Garth is locally listed as advised by the Council's Conservation Area Character Appraisal, which states as a main characteristic of the area the retention of Shrewsbury House and grounds at the centre of the Lang Estate. Green Garth is covered by the Conservation Area rules, which include all the buildings contribute to the conservation area. Subdivision of plots would not be considered appropriate. The land on which the estate is built is subject to planning conditions and detailed restricted covenants, perpetual in nature. It is felt that these aspects would have been relevant to the Cabinet report. In summary, we request that the decision be reversed and for the Council to work together with groups on reuniting Green Garth with the rest of Shrewsbury House for its intended community use for this and future generations. Thank you.
Thank you. And just note that we have also got your written submissions and we'll be taking those into account as well. Thank you. I've got Sally McDougall next, please, from the Shrewsbury House Community Association.
I'm speaking as Chair of Trustees of the Shrewsbury House Community Association, which has a monthly user base of 5,000 people. It's likely that the sale of the 28 Merworth site will have a negative impact on our ability to provide community services and programmes, for example through noise disruption and a lack of space for the Scouts. We should have been consulted. The call-in report states that the Shrewsbury House Community Association canvassed the views of the wider community and that we did not agree to the terms proposed in respect to 28 Merworth Drive. This statement is misleading. It suggests that the fact we openly undertook consultation with our users and neighbours can now be co-opted into a process of disposal which we were not even aware of. The suggestion that we withdrew from discussions with RBG over 28 Merworth Drive is also misleading. In fact, as email correspondence confirms, in 2019 RBG offered us heads of terms with regard to taking over 28 Merworth Drive, and the only issue in question was the length of the lease on offer. We need a long lease to apply for funding for suitable use of the building and grounds. The record shows that the Board of Shrewsbury House Community Association never withdrew its interest in 28 Merworth Drive. Similarly, the record shows that Royal Borough of Greenwich never told us that the discussions were at an end. As recently as the 23rd of July 2024, the Board of Trustees wrote to Royal Borough of Greenwich to restate our interest in taking on 28 Merworth Drive and working with the Council to deliver a list of positive outcomes. Royal Borough of Greenwich failed to respond to that request. We have since set up a petition, currently at over 1,300 signatures, to demonstrate that public support for our use of the site, which we made public prior to the Council's decision to dispose of the site. Thus, it is clear that in taking the decision to dispose of 28 Merworth Drive, the process was certainly not fair, in that key stakeholders, including Shrewsbury House Community Association, were not informed it was even taking place, and the deficiencies in the reports to Cabinet and this committee show that it was not based on the best evidence. We are asking for a community asset transfer so that we can take over use of the site. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate Halpin, please.
Good evening. I fully echo the comments that Sally and Rob have made as both a resident and trustee of the Shrewsbury House Community Association, and that the responses we've heard tonight have been disingenuous. It's just worth noting that nearly 10 years ago, Shrewsbury House was on the brink of closure, and it's thanks to the tireless work of successive boards, our brilliant staff, wonderful volunteers and residents that it's moved from surviving to thriving and reaching capacity, as we've heard about the number of users. As a resident, the Council generate lots of income from us each year from planning applications, which are regularly refused for not meeting the conservation area guidance. In raising 28 Merworth, the ground surrounding 28 Merworth to the ground, with none of the requisite planning permissions or heritage assessments, it would seem the local authority, as they said to us, don't consider they need to adhere to that very guidance that was implemented to preserve the character of the area. Paragraph 7.1 of the report talks about the Council can anticipate capital receipts and positive revenue impact, but when asked what that value is, we're told that we don't know what the value will be, and it's commercial in confidence. House prices in our area are suppressed by being part of the conservation area, and that's what we accept by being up there. Any potential buyer or developer will have to invest significant amounts if it's to meet the conservation guidance, unless we think the council are just going to run roughshod over that for their purposes. As we've heard, if we took over the site, we could get heritage lottery funding, and I'm afraid I've cut this short. The tone of the paper and the responses we've heard tonight suggests the council know the cost of everything and the value of nothing. The previous actions of this council over recent years lead me to fear it's more interested in courting property developers and not its residents and community. And before too long, there'll be very few parts of Greenwich Borough left that are green. Our next fear is that the maintenance, and it's not an investment, it's overdue maintenance in the roof and surrounding areas of Shrewsbury House are to sell the actual house itself. And I fear we will be back here in a couple more years' time.
Thank you. Liz McDermott, please.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I too support everything that has been said so far on both the Equestrian Centre and on Merworth Drive. My name is Liz McDermott. I'm a volunteer at Shrewsbury House and for 40 years a resident of the Shrewsbury Park estate. During COVID and since then, I have managed the gardens at Shrewsbury House, drawing up regular action plans to meet the work to be done, then allocating tasks to those volunteers available and able to carry out the activities, the latter being essential as a number of the volunteers are in a SEND group, that's Special Educational Needs and Disabilities. The benefits of gardening to mental and physical health are well documented, and it is totally unacceptable that the gardening team who coordinate this service at the house were not consulted regards the plans for Green Garth, where there are already plans for a community kitchen garden aimed at supplying the Shrewsbury House Cafe with fresh produce through a garden-to-plate project, an activity to be carried out by volunteers from the groups meeting at the house and the surrounding community. I was privileged to know Green Garth's last resident, Beatrice Horsley Williams, whose father was a one-time architect for the borough of Woolwich. During time spent with her, she made it known that it was her dearest wish that on her demise, Green Garth would go back to community use. In conclusion, had Cabinet been fully informed of the user groups, including the gardening team, and the extent to which the House serves the community, its plans and for the future and its past history, additional information would have been requested and a consultation would have been carried out. Thank you.
Thank you. William Goslier, please.
Hi, I'm an architect who lives in the Royal Borough of Greenwich and been working with Shrewsbury House. Just talk briefly on my experience of matters like this, which has largely been from a developer's side in the past, working for developers, drawing up feasibility studies for projects exactly like Green Garth. There are a number of items that seem to be distinctly missing from the Council's decisions. The first is, obviously, they were aware that it was in a conservation area, but the conservation area 4.5 of the appraisal explicitly states that the Lang estate is complete and that any development or redevelopment would not be supported, except the odd exception on Eaglesfield Road, something that makes this completely undesirable to a developer. Secondly, the listing of the site, it's been speculated about whether or not the building is listed, as it's not mentioned specifically in the listing. Just want to reiterate that it's within the curtilage of the building, and Historic England considers that as part of the listing, making it a less attractive site for development and therefore for sale. Thirdly, the deed to the land, which I think was briefly mentioned earlier, but anyone is able to download the deed from the land registry. It clearly states that the building has to stay within community use, making the whole argument about why you want to dispose of it completely null and void. Information that doesn't seem to have been apparent to the Council, and another argument for why it should be sent back. Thanks.
Thank you. Priscilla Graham, please.
I've been a resident in Merworth Drive for 56 years and live 3 doors from number 28, or Green Garth, and the site is clearly seen from my bedroom window. I've seen the site very, very little over those many years. I've been involved with Shrewsbury House Community Centre in various ways over the 56 years. I know that over the past 6 years there have been negotiations between them and Greenwich for Green Garth to be leased by Shrewsbury House so that it could become a useful asset for the community as a community garden and accessible art therapy centre. During 2023-24, the summer house at 28 was renovated, and in the summer of 2024, the garden was cleared of most of the mature trees and all of the undergrowth. In November 2024, Greenwich dropped a bombshell when a proposal was put to and voted through unopposed by Cabinet that 28 Merworth Drive should be put up for sale with no background information given or asked for. I find it unbelievable that the item went to Cabinet with absolutely no consultation with local residents or Shrewsbury House. The site has been an integral part of our estate since Green Garth was built in 1943, and certainly part of my and my family's life as we pass it nearly every time we leave our house. Concerning the clearing of the trees last summer, if myself or any resident on the estate wished to prune even a single tree, we have to seek permission from Greenwich. In the case of Green Garth, virtually every tree was felled, leaving the site looking bereft. Before continuing with any disposal of 28 Merworth Drive, Greenwich Council should carry out a meaningful consultation with residents of Shrewsbury Park Estate and with Shrewsbury House.
Thank you. And finally, Andy Brockman, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members and fellow residents. My name is Andy Brockman. I am speaking, like my colleague Sally there, as a trustee of Shrewsbury House Community Association, not as a member of the public. I'd also, before I start, and I will be brief, but I would also draw attention to the written submission that you should all have in front of you, and which actually deals in detail with the few points I'm able to make in the time I've actually got this evening. And I should finally add, I'm speaking to you also as a professional archaeologist and historian with a particular expertise in World War II. Some of you might have seen the time team that we did a few years ago, which was supported by the Council, and we were very grateful for it. I'm going to just amplify a few points that Will mentioned a moment ago to do with the listing of Green Garth, 28 Merworth Drive. It is a World War II civil defence building that has been repurposed as a house. It is not a detached house, as the Cabinet were told. In terms of curtilage, and we'll mention curtilage listing is a well-trusted mechanism that Historic England understands is able to make sense and ensure that complex sites are properly protected. Sites with different structures that are related to each other can be properly assessed and protected. Very briefly, excuse me, under the terms of the Listed Buildings and Conservation Areas Act 1990, Merworth Drive is wholly within the curtilage of Shrewsbury House and was before 1st of July 1948. That is proven by a 1944 air photograph, which also shows active paths between what was then the ARP Control Centre, Shrewsbury House, and Green Garth. It was a building that was integrally related to that particular function. Both of those are conditions for curtilage listing. In a wider context, the Shrewsbury House curtilage contains a cross-section of World War II civil defence buildings and Cold War civil defence buildings and garden features which are carried contiguously across the entire site. It's a single site, and according to both Historic England and the curtilage plan and the land registry, which Will mentioned, It is a single site. Now, there's no definition of what
Thank you,
28
sir.
Merworth Drive actually represents, and I will just make this final point because it's a critical one. 28 Merworth Drive has no legal definition in the land registry. So it may be that Cabinet didn't even know what it was actually disposing of because it has no legal identity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We do have your written submission as well that goes into more detail. Just checking with the panel if they want to ask any questions from the members of the public in particular. Do you have a question? Okay, moving on to the Cabinet members then. Is there anything that you want to say in response to the submissions that you've heard from the members of the public?
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll start. Just in response to the last point, whilst this property is locally listed, it's noted as being within the curtilage of the nationally listed properties. The call-in report into 4.10 notes that whether or not a building is listed or in proximity to a listed building does not preclude the recommendation for disposal. Listed buildings are disposed of at times. Several comments have been made in the submissions today, and I appreciate the time people have taken. But most of the options that have been given would, by definition, need some kind of financial input from the council, which we would not be in a position to do. And that's why we've taken the steps that we've taken. Some assets, closing some assets, I also think doesn't negate our ability to provide support for the various missions that we've got. We've looked at how we are providing for the community within all our missions. And it isn't a matter that if you close this one, you're not able to do the work around the missions that we've stated. I think the Equestrian Centre, our business is not running an Equestrian Centre. When we've had two organisations try to run it, and it's not worked. There are options, as people have stated, in other areas in South London, but we still have to make prudent decisions. We really do. My understanding also, actually, is that the numbers that we're using the Equestrian Centre from Greenwich was quite low. So I would be interested in finding out a little bit more about, why we would be in this position. And I can't see, in realistic terms, how we could be justifying saying that we're going to pass over assets without the proper consideration, because we are asked of that all round the borough from all sorts of voluntary sector organisations and community groups. It's just not a luxury we can afford. This is not the only group that, groups that are concerned about an asset within their community. We're facing these difficult choices right across the borough, Chair. And so it's really unfortunate that we've come to where we are, but we have to make those decisions.
Thank you. Councillor Rahman?
Yeah, I'll just add a few bit. I'm just trying to follow the comments. There's a lot of, thank you for sharing your comments, by the way. And in terms of some of the things that were mentioned, I know the London kind of legacy, the 2012 legacy was mentioned, and Newham was mentioned as a council, which has kind of really supported some of the activities. But I think Newham as a council is not a very good example, simply because they're in special measures because of financial mismanagement. And that's not a route that we want to take. And in terms of the Olympic Park, it was the London Legacy Development Corporation that was able to build build out all the developments in order to sustain the space as it was. So again, there's a financial implication to maintaining something like that, and that's not what we're kind of setting out to do. But what we are trying to do is trying to be financially responsible, and it's not, by putting something on the disposal, it hasn't been sold yet. It's been considered to be sold, and it's open for everyone to bid. And it could be in all forms, and all the options have been listed within the document. So it's not keeping anyone out, but it's making sure that we get the best value for the space, for the land, and in favour of our residents across the borough. And yes, a question centre is a great luxury to have, and and if someone has a great plan, business plan, come forward and do put your bid forward. No one's been excluded from this, but we don't want to make special measures for anyone specifically, which would undervalue the land. So we want a good, strong, robust plan that comes forward. We will consider that. And just going to looking at 28 Merworth Drive, I think everyone made a very good comments about the conservation space. I think what we have to look at is, yes, it's on the disposal list. It hasn't been sold yet. It's still open for anyone to bid on this land. Unfortunately, the discussion with Shrewsbury House didn't go anywhere. It hadn't ended necessarily, but it didn't go anywhere. But anything beyond a certain amount of years, it has to go on. Is regarded as disposal. It has to be on the disposal list, and it has to go through certain measures. So, in terms of the time requested by Shrewsbury House, it would have to go on the market as in order to get a fair price. But in terms of the conservation space, yes, you're right. Anyone that wants to build there would be bound by those planning regulations, and the fact that it's listed, the fact that it is in a conservation space, they'll have to factor those in for any kind of development or non-development. We haven't made an assumption of what's going to happen there yet. We've just listed it because we want to get the best value for this space, and it's open to everyone to apply. So no one has been excluded yet. I think that's important. And yes, your comments about conservation space, it stands, and we all agree it's not going to be easy for anyone to do anything. And that's a good thing, because it means the space has to be used in line with preserving the area. Thank you.
Quickly, Chair, if I may, putting anything on the disposal list still would have to, whoever is bidding, and wanting to do anything with that site would have to go for the proper planning procedures. And within that, there would also be consultation that's there, and people would be able to make fair representations at that board. And, people this has happened time and time again, as one of our speakers said today. There's that planning consideration, so all the issues about listing or conservation area will be covered in whoever else is making a bid in what they're doing. We can't preempt that. So, that wouldn't be for us to say.
Thank you. Sorry, there's no more comments from the public at this point. Thank you. I'm now going to ask the signatories to the call-in if they have any final comments before handing back to the Cabinet members for any response to that, and then the committee will make the decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And I guess, I want to say thank you to all the residents who have come here tonight to have their say. This is why we called this decision in, to give people the opportunity to do that. I think we've heard tonight just a taste of what the Council would hear if it ran the community consultation that we've proposed, the upfront consultation before this decision is taken. And, we've heard so many ideas tonight from the community for both of these sites of potential future uses. So all I'd really add is to urge the Cabinet members to really just show some humility tonight. I respect both of these Cabinet members. They work hard. They've got very difficult jobs. It's important to put that on the record. I think they would earn so much respect in this room and outside of it if they just showed the humility, after everything we've heard tonight, to say, OK, the Council's got this one wrong, and we're going to pause. We're not going to take a decision until we've run a full consultation with the community up front. I think they'd earn so much respect if they did that. So that's what I'd say. And to facilitate that, I'd again urge the panel to make a recommendation to send it back to Cabinet so that they can hopefully do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any final comments from the Cabinet members before we make our decision? Councillor Fahy, would you like to start?
Thank you, Chair. Again, appreciation to everybody who's turned up to the meeting and the important contributions that they have made. Having read the report and had the opportunity of asking some questions of those involved in the process, it seems to me that putting it in terms that the Cabinet have come to a decision about a list of disposals, including the two that are before us this evening. And in making that decision, the report before us this evening, particularly around paragraphs 3.14, 5 and 6, sets out that a consultation will take place. There are options set out in paragraph 3.15 as to the potential options available to those who want to seek to address the important considerations that the public have made this evening about the importance of communities and ensuring that we build a stronger community by the assets we have. And so therefore I think on balance it seems to me that the Cabinet, in making that decision, provides an opportunity for consultation to take place. Those involved this evening here and the wider public will have an opportunity to provide some proposals as to how they want to seek to address the issues of retaining those buildings, and I think that's very positive. And some suggestions around the room have been made, and no doubt Cabinet will take those into consideration. But I think it is important that in looking at the issue about consultation, my final point is consultation has to be meaningful and respect for everybody involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davis, do you have any thoughts you'd like to share?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all the residents and members of the community who came along and I think made their views very clear this evening. I think that they've made some very powerful points. And I actually, bringing the temperature down of the meeting, I think it is understandable that the Cabinet members do have difficult jobs, but I think that the Council has tried to set out a structure through which it does its community engagement, and I just can't see how these decisions follow a structure that is quite noble in terms of bringing the community with them in making decisions. And I can't see how that has been done. And we've heard from people like Jim and Barry speaking about the Equestrian Centre and how community groups want to get involved in the future of that site. And we've heard from the Shrewsbury House Community Association about how they want to get involved with the future of that site and they want to make it so that the community can use that site. And so in my mind, I really think that engagement should be taking place first, because from the discussion we've had this evening, I just don't see that that engagement and discussion is going to take place if we push through with this.
I think I would disagree with you there slightly, Councillor Davis. I totally agree in the need for meaningful consultation, to Councillor Fahy's point. But I think this is very much the first stage. The decision's been made to dispose. The correct processes were followed for that disposal. In paragraph 3.14, there's lots of options, and there are opportunities for consultation at various points. And I think Councillor Khan made the very good point that following any of the types of disposals, which could include a community asset transfer, and it is open for that proposal to be made for Shrewsbury's House, for example, that when disposals are made, whatever happens to those sites goes to consultation as well as part of the planning process. There are various points at which consultation can happen, and having the consultation at this point, sending it back to consider consultation at this point, I don't think makes a huge amount of sense when there's plenty of places to have that consultation. What I would say is everybody in this room has made such valid and impassioned arguments. I know the Cabinet members will take that into account. This is part of the public discussion and part of the democracy around it, this call-in itself.
Chair, respectfully, I disagree. If we're doing the consultation at planning, you've let the bathwater out before. It's far too late to be doing the consultation at planning stage and using that. And I think, especially for residents
The decision is on disposal, though. It's not on the future use of the site. At the moment, the decision is disposal.
This is what we've just said about consultation. You've just said about consultation, Chair. And frankly, the Cabinet member has given the opposite of assurances on consultation when it comes to Green Garth. She would not give an assurance that there would be further consultation tonight. And so I really can't, in good faith, put my name to the proceeding without referring it back to the Cabinet member. Ultimately, there's 3 people here, but I can't in good faith not send this back to the Cabinet member, in my mind.
Thank you. Just confirming the procedure there with legal counsel. Councillor Fahy, would your decision be in terms of referring the decision back or allowing the decision to stand?
Allow the decision to stand, bearing in mind that the process is clear as set out on the agenda, and Cabinet has a duty not only in respect of the discussion this evening, but in terms of the Localism Act and in all relevant legislation, that the Cabinet will do its duty in relation to following that due process.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. For the reasons I've sort of made clear earlier, my choice would be option 2, to refer the decision to the Cabinet for reconsideration, together with the subcommittee's comments relating to the call-in reasons and the alternative decision, which is sought.
Thank you. I'm afraid my decision will be to accept the decision and allow immediate implementation. When we accept a decision, we don't give official recommendations, but I would urge the Cabinet members to take into account what you've heard tonight when engaging with interested groups with regards to the disposal, and any submissions that are made with response to consultations to be meaningfully taken into account in subsequent decisions. Thank you very much for your time.